Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to show you MAtricks for effects. And just like last week, I wrote a small set of macros that should help you kind of discover the various settings that MAtricks offers you for effects interactively. And that should enable you to kind of discover looks that you really like a lot faster. So without further ado, let's just dive right into today's show file. Again, just like last week's video on MAtricks, I have a set of LED bars, and I already went ahead and defined an effect. Let me just clear that out right here. So if I double click on that, you can see an effect with a chaser in here. And I chose that special form just so that we can clearly see the different MAtricks settings and the effect it has on our effect. The second trick that I employed right here is that I assigned the effect to an executor. So now when I turn this on, we can actually go ahead and edit the effect, and we can immediately see the changes up here in this layout view. All right, and so first of all, what I want to do is show you the three different options that we have, the three different parameters for MAtricks in effects, and those are groups, blocks, and wings. Now these are really similar to the regular MAtricks parameters that I showed you last week, only with slight differences, and I'm going to talk about these in a moment. So now maybe let's just start with blocks, because this is always the easiest to explain. When I enter 2, it's not going to step through the selection of fixtures. It's not going to apply this effect to your selection of fixtures, one fixture at a time, but instead, 2 fixtures at a time. Same goes for wings. I'm just going to reset this. So wings is just like, as we saw last week, whenever you have a certain amount of wings, it's going to take your fixture selection and divide it up in however many wings you want to have. And what's interesting is that if we, for example, enter 3 wings right here, what you can see here is that the first wing is going in forward direction, the second wing is going in backward direction, and then the third wing is going in forward direction again. So however many wings you want to have, what it's going to do is separate your selection of fixtures into that many wings, and consecutive wings actually have an opposite running order of how your effect is going to be applied there. Lastly, groups, and that's a special option that you have in effects but not in the regular MAtricks. I'm going to show you the difference in a second. Third parameter that I want to show you is groups, and groups is sort of similar to wings, but only with slight differences. With groups, you don't split up your fixture selection in equal portions like in wings. Like wings, for example, if you set it to 3, then you have 3 equally large fixture selections. So all of your fixtures get divided up into 3 wings with however many fixtures in each wing. With groups, however, you specify how many fixtures in a row you want to assign or want to deal with in one group. So if we enter 5, for example, what will happen here is that the first, the second, and the third row are each their own group, and that's where the effect will be run on separately. So the effect currently runs on 3 different parts of your fixture selection, and that is in the first, and the second, and the third row. And the big difference to wings, for example, is that it always gets, the effect always gets run in the same direction in every group. So these are the 3 parameters for MAtricks in effects. And now what I did to kind of be able to play around with these settings is, again, write a set of macros. Let me just pull that up a little bit so you can see. So I wrote these macros right here, and when you download the show file from the video description, make sure to first run this command right here. It's going to initialize all the variables that these macros use so that the macros run the way that you would expect them to. And then the first thing you want to do, and again, I'm going to, just like in last week's video, I'm going to use my custom programming keyboard right here. So I have a few keys mapped out down here that make it a lot easier to trigger these buttons right here. So I'm not going to use the mouse, just so you don't get surprised by what's happening in a second. So first what I'm going to do is hit this one right here, select effects. And what you want to do there is enter the number of the effect that you want to modify using these parameter macros. And in our case, obviously that's effect number 1. Now that we have it selected, we can use all of these macros over here. And so I want to start out by increasing the block size, for example. So now you can see when I hit this macro over here, then the block size always gets increased. And if I increase this up to 5, then you can see that our effect all of a sudden is running in nice little rows. I love that. Again, if I want to reduce the number of blocks, I'm just going to hit this macro in my case. Just to be able to keep the layout view in focus, I'm going to use my keyboard. And the nice thing is, since we applied or assigned the effect to the executor, we can see all of the changes happening as we make them. And so again, just like in last week's video, what you can do is you can easily just increase these parameters and find a setting that you really, really like. And once you're done with that, I mean, in this case, it always gets automatically put into the effect. So now if I set the blocks to 12, for example, and I edit this effect, you can see that it's set to 12 over here in the effect editor as well. So unlike last week, whatever changes you make with this tool automatically stay in your effect. All right, let's try out a little bit the other options. We can, for example, use groups right here. And you can see it kind of acts like an interleave almost, like from our last week's selection. And now in this case, obviously, again, the example that I showed you previously, we now set the groups to 5. So now the effect is running through our fixture selection in columns, which I love. I really like this look. And again, you can just play around with it. Maybe increase the block size a little bit too. And like that, find a really, really nice setting. Oh, also with the group setting, by the way, we had it to 5 earlier, and that's still a really predictable result. Watch what happens when I increase the group size to a number that's larger than the amount of fixtures that I have in here. So I mean, all in all, we have 15 fixtures here, and the cool thing is, the more I increase this group size, the faster the effect will run through this fixture selection. So I think, you know, once you crank these numbers up to extreme levels, you will find some really, really cool looking combinations. And that's the reason behind these macros, is for you to really be able to mess around with MAtricks in a way that you can really discover the various options really fast and just play around with it. I love it. You can also see right here that when I hit 0, it's not going to go any lower. That's just going to make sure that you don't risk setting any invalid values. All right, and last but not least, I mean, obviously wings. We already talked about that. You know, you can just step through the settings using these 2 macros right here. Again, I'm just triggering these from my keyboard. And you can see in the command line the effect that it has. Ooh, nice. Nice little asymmetrical effect running right here. All right. Last thing I want to show you in this lineup of macros, I'm just going to reset this all to 0, is direction. So you probably know, all right, what's going on here? Thank you. So you probably know the direction field right here. You have 4 options: forward, backward, forward bounce, backward bounce. And I thought it'd be nice to also have that available to mess around with. So now I'm just going to trigger this macro right here. And I mean, obviously, if we don't have a big selection, that's not going to change much. But we can, for example, just set the block size to 5 and then go through here. Now we have a nice little bounce. I love that. So with this set of macros, again, it's available in the show file that you can download for free in the video description. You should be able to really mess around with all of these settings that give your effects a completely different look and feel. And like that, you can hopefully find settings that you really, really like. You can also take a look at how these macros kind of change the effect. So once you find a setting that you really like, what you can also do is simply write a macro for yourself that's going to assign all of these settings to a predefined effect of your choice, or you kind of incorporate this select effects macro right over here that's going to ask you for which effect you want to modify. Right. So with that being said, let's talk about the difference between MAtricks and fixtures and effects. That's something that was asked in the comment section. And first of all, let's take a look at the two different edit windows. So up here is the MAtricks for a selection. You can see right here that we have Interleave, blocks, and wings. And also, by the way, what we did last week and in this week is really sort of dive into the first complexity layer of MAtricks. There's actually a completely two-dimensional aspect to MAtricks that I haven't even discovered myself. So whatever I showed you last week and in this week, it's just getting you started and kind of, getting you familiar with MAtricks. But I'm definitely going to do another video on the more complex, advanced topics in MAtricks. I think with a really, really mighty and powerful tool like that, it's just important to kind of get started first before diving into the hard stuff. So what we can see here is Interleave, blocks, and wings. And over here, if we take a look at the effects editor, we can see groups, blocks, and wings. Oh, this screenshot isn't very good. So you might have noticed that with a fixture selection, you get to pick an interleave, but with effects, you don't have that option. Instead, what you get is groups. And word of, caution, I'm not as deep into MAtricks as I would like to. I think that groups are also available for fixture selections, but it's sort of a tricky thing. So for now, let's just assume that interleave is only available in fixture selection through MAtricks, and groups is only available in effects. And now let's take a look at what these parameters do again. Blocks obviously groups together your fixtures. So in this case, my example value is always 2. So blocks of 2 will make sure that you step through your fixture selection in blocks of 2 fixtures, 2 consecutive fixtures. And obviously you can also apply an effect like that instead of kind of applying it to consecutive fixtures in your selection order. What you do is kind of pair them together. Now wings, as we just discussed, is separating your fixture selection into however many wings you set up. So in this case, we just have 2 parts that are the 2 wings, and as I mentioned earlier, the running order is, the running direction is always opposite to each other. So every consecutive wing has the opposite direction. Now interleave is something that we saw in the fixture selection, and this just means that you select interleave equals 2, in that case, every second fixture. So if we were to set this to 3, then MAtricks would go first fixture selected, second no, third no, and then this fixture. So then every third fixture essentially. Now groups, as we discussed earlier, groups is sort of a similar concept to wings, but in terms of groups, what you do is you specify the group size. So in this case, again, our example value here is 2. So in that case, your fixture selection is broken up into groups of 2 fixtures each, and on every group you have the effect running in the same direction. And that's pretty much the difference between effects in fixture selections versus effects. Now, I'm pretty sure that there are more details to it, more nuances to it, but essentially these are the high level differences. Also, what's really interesting, if we go back to MA, you can always take a fixture selection. So since MAtricks is a selection tool, what we could easily do, and I'm just going to keep our effect running maybe. I'm just going to reset all of these values, group 0, and also direction. Alright, so now what we could easily do is select these fixtures, go to MAtricks, then have an interleave off 2. Let me just check. Yes, that should work. Alright, and now we should be able to go into the effect and take the selection. So now in this case, what you can see is that the interleave isn't exactly available in the effects editor, but what you can always do is use MAtricks with an interleave to take a selection of fixtures on which you want to run your effect on. So that's all I wanted to show you for MAtricks in effects. Now again, there's so much to MAtricks that I thought it's really important to just get started. And these macros are really your starting point. Now, when you export them from the show file and import them to your own shows, again, make sure to first call init variables and then select the effect that you want to modify. And also, again, maybe make sure to assign it to an executor. Like that, you can directly see the live changes. And that's all I wanted to show you for MAtricks in effects. Now, this is really a complex topic, but I'm hoping that with the set of macros that I showed you last week and in this week, MAtricks isn't this big scary tool anymore that only pros use, but you can also dive right into it and create some awesome looking content. And that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this one, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments or hit me up on Twitter at a guy named Jonas. If you haven't already, do me a big favor and subscribe. And with that being said, there's going to be new macro MA2-bit videos coming later this week. I already recorded all the material, I just have to edit it and upload it. I'm really sorry I didn't get to this in the last few weeks, but it's coming this week and I'm super excited about that. So with that being said, have a great week, you guys. Take care and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.